Alright, so as I said, this is almost an exercise in patience and debugging because the statements that you're putting together are rather complex. What we're doing is creating a couple of integer variables, of actually 5 of them to be exact. Then we start by assigning some numeric values to these integer variables. W gets the value 2, X gets 3, Y gets 8, and Z gets 6. And then we're going to execute a number of statements that are going to essentially be mathematical statements whose values we're going to assign to result. And then before we do the next one, we're going to print out exactly what we did. So in the first one, we're going to add x to y, or x to w. So we're adding 6 to 2. And the answer, x to w is 3 to 2. And the result is going to be 5. And then we're going to print out the value of x, a string that contains a plus sign, the value of y, a string that contains the equal sign, and the value of result. And that's going to be 3 plus 2 equals 5. Then we're going to show an example of multiplication by taking x and multiplying it by w and storing the result, or storing the answer in result. 2 times 3 is 6. So first we're going to print out x, and then we're going to print out a string that contains the multiply sign, then the value of w, then a string that contains the equal sign, and then the result, the value of result. 3 times 2 is 6. Then we're going to divide 3 by 2. And we're going to store the result in result, and the answer is going to be 0. We are then going to print out the value of x, a string that contains the divide symbol, which is the forward slash, the value of w, a string that contains the equal sign, and the value of result. Or I'm sorry, it's 1. 3 goes into 2 one time. 1 point something. Again, notice integer division, we've lopped off the decimal result. It's just gone. Next, we're going to do modulus. Y mod z. So 8 mod 6. So what is left over from 8 when we take 6 away? The answer is going to be 2. And that's going to be stored in result. So we're going to print out the value of y. We're going to print out a string that contains the modulus operator. We're going to print the value of z. We're going to print out a string that contains an equal sign and the value of result. 8 modulus 6 is 2. Now we're going to do a slightly more complex statement. X plus w times z. So 3 plus 2 times 6. Now, if we remember order of operations, that means what's actually going to happen is w is going to be multiplied by z. So 6 times 2, which is 12, plus 3, which is going to equal 15. And that's going to be stored in result. And we're going to print that out. We're going to print out the value of x, the value, a string that contains the plus sign, the value of w, a string that contains the multiply sign, the value of z, and a string that contains the equal sign, and finally the value of result. We're going to change that up this time around, and using parentheses, force Java to process 3 plus 2. Remember that x is 3 and w is 2. And then we're going to multiply that result by 6. That's going to give us 30. That is going to be stored in result. Finally, we're going to print out the parenthesis, a string that contains a parenthesis, an open parenthesis, the value of x, a string that contains the plus sign, the value of w, a string that contains a closed parenthesis, another string that contains the multiply symbol, the value of z, a string that contains equals, and the value of result. And you get 3 plus 2 in parentheses times 6 equals 30. Questions? Yes. So when you put in the second one, when you put in the first one, you should get 15. So this line should give you 15. It is x plus w times z, right? And then you're saying for the second one you also got 15? Well, 3 plus 2 is never going to equal 15. Right, but you shouldn't take the z out. The z needs to be in there. Well, it would be if his result statement is also printing 5. If his result statement is printing 5, then the math is wrong. Right. You put in the actual wrong statement. Right. So your print statement's wrong. So make sure, look at the handout again, and make sure your print statement matches what's listed in the handout, because you have your print statement wrong. If it's printing out 3 plus 2 equals 15, then you forgot to add a few extra items that are in that statement, that are in the above statement to the printout, so that they display. So you're going to have to look at your system.out.print line and make sure that it is correct. Because remember, the goal of these print statements is to print out the values along with what the operations were that you did, so you can see the end result. Now, if you notice, that's a little more complicated than just doing the math. But it is something that you do need to know how to do. Again, this is almost an exercise in patience and in debugging. Because invariably, even I do it. I miss a plus sign. I forget to close a literal string with a double quote. It was much worse before we started using NetBeans, and it sort of helps you with some of this stuff. But this assignment can really try your patience. It really can try your patience, and this is why we do this as an in-class assignment.